All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back into episode 3, another edition of the Behind the Mic podcast. I am Mike Kadlick, taking you on this journey to find out more about everyone, everything in this sports media space, who the personalities are, what makes them tick, etc. And for episode 3, I am joined by a very special guest, and I don't say that lightly because we'll get into it sooner. We'll get into it down the line in this conversation, but I am joined by longtime Celtics and NBA reporter, Sherrod Blakely. I shouldn't say probably, he is the reason that I'm sitting here today and able to have this conversation with you guys, with him and with all these sports media members. So, Sherrod, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Good to be here, Mike. Good to be here. It's been a while. It's been a while. Glad to see that you're doing well and you're branching out. This is what we envisioned. This is the dream come true. So this is good. I'm enjoying this.
Exactly. Yeah. It's great. It's fun. It's many of us say it's the best job in the world, and so it's good to be able to, like you said, branch this off and talk to everybody, find out everyone's journeys, and so we'll get into the thing I teased in a minute about why I'm here and how we've made this connection. But first, I want to give fans, everyone watching this, a sense of how you got to where you are today, because you've been, and I'm sure if people recognize you and your name, a lot of it has to do with your journey at NBC Sports Boston covering the Celtics, but you've done a lot, obviously, since your start in this industry. So we're calling it resume time on the show. It's sort of our segment 1, and basically the floor is yours to tell us and me your journey in this field and how you got to where you are today. So let's hear it.
Well, I think for me and really a lot of people, you find yourself just happening to be in the right place at the right time, and you're ready for those moments. And my career has been a lot of that. When I did not want to be a journalist, did not want to be a writer, hated writing. Was very much locked into, when I was in high school, focusing on chemical engineering. That was really my sweet spot. Those were the two things that I was very passionate about. But I had, long story short, I had an English class that I hated. And the teacher gave us an assignment to write about something we did that weekend. So I thought I was implementing what I call the English cheat code. And I wrote about something that was just really, I didn't think was grade worthy, but I said, but he didn't get specific what we could write about. So I wrote about a football game. And I wrote about the football game, and I got an A on the assignment. And after class, he said, you should think about a career in sports writing. And that was the first time.
What year was this? How old were you at this point? What grade was
like maybe 14, 13, 14.
Wow.
Yeah. And so after hearing that, I just didn't really think a whole lot about it. And I was registered to take a journalism class my high school junior year. And I took that class and did well in that class. And then from there, I went on to Syracuse University, where I studied journalism. And then, that's kind of got where the ball started rolling, where internships and different jobs and networking and all that stuff just all of a sudden started coming together. And next thing you know, it's like 30 years later, and I'm still kind of in this space. So it's been a definitely interesting journey. My focus early on was really college sports. That was really what I was passionate about, what I really wanted to do. But opportunities came to take a look at the NBA and some other pro sports, and those opportunities led to more opportunities. And the next thing you know, I'm in Boston, and I've been in Boston for since 2009. So. Yeah, my journey, it's definitely been a winding one, but it's one where I think if there's one bit of advice I'd give anyone who's trying to figure out what their journey should look like, is just don't overthink the process, and just make sure that you're as prepared as you can for every step along the way. And you need to have a certain amount of expectations and anticipation about your career. But the biggest thing is just try to learn as much as you can, as quick as you can, and as much as you can.
And so at 14, you sort of said you kind of turned the focus, but you said chemical engineering too. So is there still like any, I guess, passion for that? Where did that come from, and where did that change? Like, were you at 13 years old being like, I want to be a chemical engineer, or was that later down the line?
The engineering part, I that's something I wanted to do earlier, because that's what my dad did. And so when I got to, I'd say probably my junior year, when I took my first high school chemistry course, it was the easiest course I took. And even though everyone else was struggling, like, what the hell are you talking about? This is not easy. This is
Yeah,
hard.
right.
It was very easy for me. And so that led me to believe that if it's easy for me now, just imagine if I actually had to work at this and then I had to, like, it would get harder. And for me, that was kind of the focus that's what I wanted to do. But journalism, I just it just the bug just bit me. And
Mhm.
sport, to me, the idea of just spending my entire existence in some way, shape, or form around sports, that's for someone who loves lots of different sports. It was the best job I could possibly have. And the one thing I learned early on was that, well, there are a lot of people that have jobs in sports, but can you make it a career?
Mhm.
And the key to making it a career is just having the power to pivot in whatever direction the career or the job takes you, so that you can always stay in the game. That's one of the things that I really, I'm very conscious of, because even though now I teach most of the time at Boston University, I'm still writing, I'm still co-hosting podcasts and
Mhm.
doing some directing and just doing a lot of different things that are part of the sports journalism ecosystem, and not being comfortable in any one particular role. And that's how you can take this from being just a job and making it a career.
You said power to pivot, and that's ingrained in my head from the
We
course I
talked
took with
about that
you.
quite a
We've
bit.
talked
Yes.
about it a lot. So let's get right into it. And I mentioned before, and I teased it and talked about it. The reason I'm here, the reason I got into really sports media as not just a hobby or just being a sports fan, but to try and turn it into something, is because when I was taking my master's courses at Boston University, I was studying public relations. Didn't know which direction I wanted to take it. I knew that I liked communication. I went to college for that in undergrad, went to BU, got a full time job, was working in, and this is just kind of behind the scenes stuff for, and if people want to know it or not, it doesn't really matter, but that's why we're here. I was working at BU, then I transitioned. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I took a sports journalism class during my master's program. Cross paths with you. It was supposed to be Michael Hawley. You took over the course, and it's kind of been your thing ever since. So when I was there, I ended up interning after my course with Sherrod at CLNS Media, and then just kind of took that. And you mentioned earlier too, right place, right time. That's been 100% my journey. Is got on with CLNS, John Zanis, did some Patriots stuff. Evan Lazar left, took that to where I wanted to with the Patriots coverage, and then lo and behold, it turned into this. And so I thank you for that, obviously, and we talk about that constantly. But I want to talk about your journey at BU too, and how you got into it, and where this, I guess, a love for teaching came in too, because you've done so much and you've pivoted and you've taken on so many different roles. How did it come about? Where did you find that love, I guess, again, for teaching, and where do you think it's going to go with you in the future?
Well, the teaching bug hit me many years before I got to BU, and I knew at some point I was going to be pivoting in that direction. It was just a matter of at what point am I comfortable taking this off ramp to be an educator versus just being a, not just but being a reporter
Sure.
in the world of sports. And so, when the pandemic struck, lots of companies were looking to shake things up, including NBC Sports Boston. And it was, I think, for a lot of people who were kind of going through that and on kind of the downside of that, it was painful. But for me, it was a blessing in disguise, because I had already agreed to do some part-time teaching at BU.
Mhm.
And when the pandemic struck, it allowed me to really kind of dig a little bit deeper into that, and just to see if this was something that I wanted to do maybe on a more stable basis. And so I began to just start really making those inroads and coming up with different ideas and strategies that I wanted to implement, not only within the classes that I taught, but also to create some classes, and just to create some engagement with students who were trying to find their way in this whole sports journalism ecosystem, like yourself. And I did what I felt was a smart thing to do, which was leverage the contacts and things of that nature that I'd come across over the years, like John Zanis, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
who's one of my best friends,
Yeah.
and just utilize those relationships to help students get opportunities that they may not otherwise get. And that has led to folks such as yourself,
Mhm.
doing some really amazing things. Others who've gone on to work at MLB.com, and others who are at ESPN now. And it all started with one class, one semester, one time in the office, me asking, "So what do you want to do?" And
Mhm.
just us trying to figure out how to make that happen. And so for me, the transition has been a good one, and it's been one that again I knew from a very early time in my life that teaching was something I wanted to do. It's something I did know that there are certain levels of teaching I would not want to do. Like I did not want to deal with high school kids on a
Yeah,
full-time basis. I
right.
deal with them at BU for like 2, 3 weeks in the summer, but that's it. I don't want to deal with them on any basis longer than that. I did that many years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful things that I say about trying things when you're young. You learn not only what you want to do, but also what you don't want to do. And that lesson is just as valuable. And so I learned early on that there's no way in hell that I want to teach high school kids on a
Yeah.
regular basis. I can't do it. And so that's kind of my journey up to this point.
So, how do you find that power to pivot? Like, I look at this industry and I look at people trying to get into it, and it really is. It becomes a challenge to break in, and then things like the pandemic hit, and you could lose your job, or a company goes bankrupt, or people downsize, and aggregators come in, and AI. Like, it's an industry where the ground is so shaky, and you seem to just kind of hit it and run every single time, and it's hard to do that. Like, I don't. And I guess my question is, where do you find that power to just be like, you know what, let's just shift the focus? Because it's hard. I'm sure there's been low points in your career. What do you do to sort of, instead of get down on yourself and feel sorry for yourself, find that power to pivot and just look on to the next thing?
Well, for me, it really comes back to just understanding that this industry isn't that different than when I was in high school and in college and when I competed against folks. It's competition. It's just a different kind of competition, and the way that you win is in your preparation. We talk all the time about how games aren't won or lost on the field. They're often won or lost on the preparation before they get onto the field. And so that's why I try to learn as much as I can, as often as I can, so that all these different tools that I have in my toolbox of talents, I never know when I'll need to whip one of those out and it can get me through a tough spot, or it can get me an opportunity to do something that otherwise I wouldn't be able to do because I don't have that particular skill, or I don't have that particular understanding of how this particular aspect of who I am and what I can do can be a benefit. So for me, a lot of it is just making sure that I'm as prepared as I can for anything and everything, knowing that that's not going to happen. You can't possibly anticipate and be ready for everything. But I've been really, really fortunate and blessed uh, to kind of sense the winds of change before it got too chilly,
Mhm.
and so that I was able to prepare adequately for that change. Like when I was at NBC Sports Boston and there were layoffs, when I mentioned to you earlier, it was a blessing in disguise. For me, it was because I had multiple offers to do work like within 72 hours,
Mhm.
and that's not normal.
Right.
But what I learned was that because I'd made lots of connections and networks, once the word got out that I was available, folks were interested to see, could we work something out? Could we get a
Mhm.
deal done? And that to me was really from a confidence standpoint, it was reassuring because whenever there are any type of layoffs and things like that, you're not there. It's a blow to your ego because it means that
Right.
even if the reasons are monetary, they didn't want you. They didn't want you. The way they envision themselves, you are not part of that future.
Right.
And I've learned just from personal and observations that often it's not necessarily whether you're good or bad, but whether you're an ideal fit. And so by having the ability to pivot in lots of different directions, you have the ability to fit in whatever hole or peg or square that you may need to in order to keep advancing and just really kind of keep your career just that, a career, as opposed to a job that you just lost. And so that's been really, really fortunate for me. And the pivot to teaching
Mhm.
full time, it was something that I've been thinking about. But I mean, to be completely transparent, the dean just asked me one day, "Do you want to do this full time?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And
Yeah.
so that it was an incredibly swift courtship in that regard. And I've been doing it full time the last couple of years, and I enjoy it. I really enjoy just working with students and seeing the growth.
Yeah.
Like when I think about you, first day, I think of you very differently the last day of class than I did the first day of class.
Mhm.
You kind of had that because back then it was like everything was Zoom, and you had that like dark, grungy background where I could barely see you, and I'm just like, who the hell is this guy? Is he like in the middle of a cave or something?
It was my poorly lit bedroom at my parents' house, is what it was.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And you
I
had this
probably had a longer beard.
yeah, you had this scruffy beard and you had this dark background. I'm like, man, is he like in the middle of like, Vermont or Maine or somewhere? But again, it's once we were able to obviously get past that stuff, and just watching your growth and watching the growth of most of my students, that's what I get excited about. To me, when you're a reporter, you're so big on breaking news, and that's the adrenaline rush that really keeps you going. But as a professor, you're more the adrenaline rush is seeing your students get jobs and get
Mhm.
internships and start moving closer and closer to achieving the dreams that they have. Because for me, everything that I've got, my biggest, I call it the absolute double-edged sword of Sherrod. And that is my goal in life was to be a major college football and basketball writer. That's a great goal. The problem for me was I achieved that goal by the time I was 23. So then it's
Mhm.
like, crap, this
What's
is
next?
good. But what the hell am I going to do? I'm going to do this for like the next 30, 40 years. And I knew that wasn't going to happen because
Right.
I thought it would take me longer to get that dream job. But what I found was that once I had that job, I started looking at it as more as a career. And as I started looking at it as a career, then it became, a situation where, okay, I'm reporting now and I'm in this space, but these are transferable skills. So that got me to thinking more about what I was doing, more so as a career than a job, because a career gives me the ability and the bandwidth to grow. Jobs, you're pretty much tied to whatever that specific function is of that
Right.
particular position. So,
It's funny you mentioned, the seeing the growth of students because like, yeah, I'm sure it is so, I guess gratifying when like you see where you fit into somebody's journey because, and again, when I every like every step I took during my internship, and then once I got a full-time job, and then once I like kind of wanted to branch off, started this podcast. One of the first people I called or text, whatever, was you to just let you know, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I appreciate you. Thanks for this because it was so instrumental, and so like it's one thing to break news, have a cool story, like say, oh, that was awesome for to see you be on the inside of that, but to see that you can help other people achieve their goals, their dreams, like must be super, like must feel awesome to kind of yeah, to kind of see them grow like that. Like again, when I looked at this podcast for myself and I'm like, all right, who do I want to have on? I'm kind of looking at my list of contacts. I'm like, I absolutely have to have Sherrod on one of these first episodes because he's the reason that we're even recording today. So, I obviously but I appreciate what you've done for me and what you've done for everybody. So it's I'm sure that that's probably your favorite part is seeing people that you've touched succeed. But outside of that, you've written, you've podcasted, you've done TV, you're on social media. The space always changes. What's your favorite part of that? Like, what's your favorite part of the day-to-day reporting outside of actually teaching? What do you find the most joy in?
to me, I that's a good question. I would say for the thing that I love, because teaching is what I love the most. That's what
Mhm.
I'm absolutely most passionate about now. And there really isn't a close second. But
Uh-huh.
I would say outside of teaching, I enjoy the seeing you all come closer to what you are passionate about. Because to me, all I'm trying to do is just really help you build a bridge that
Mhm.
you're going to have to cross in order to do it, and try to get your name and your skills and just your presence in rooms that you aren't going to necessarily have an opportunity to be in, but that
Mhm.
doesn't diminish the value that you bring to the profession. That to me is the most gratifying thing outside of the actual teaching, is just seeing the opportunities that you all are taking advantage of, because it doesn't really matter what I say or do. Ultimately, you've got to put in the work. And that was one of the
Right.
things that really stood out about you, that you're willing to put in the work. And that for me, it makes what I do a lot easier because if I'm dealing with someone who's pushing themselves to really go after this, I'm going to push myself harder to help them.
Right.
And that's one of the things that, again, what I'm doing in many respects, if I'm being completely transparent about it, are some of the things that were done for me, but lots of different people. There is a veteran reporter out in, he works for Fox Sports, named Rob Parker, who
Yep.
was a major influence on me. Another former sports editor who now he works for American City Business Journal named Gary Howard, to this day is an instrumental mentor for mine. And the thing that they did that stood out more than anything else is that they were there to help me when they didn't have to. And
Mhm.
that's the thing that for me, I try to do. I don't have to help you. All I got to do is show up, 2 days a week and talk about sports and have office hours, and I'm done. I have done
Right.
the bare minimum. I don't have to do any, I don't have to make another phone call. But
Right.
when I see students who have a passion that they're trying to pursue, and they're doing it with a clear and undeniable purpose, I can't just stand by and just let them, start just swinging in the dark trying to get somewhere. I'm going to pull out my flashlight and I'm going to shine a light on a path that I think could help them. And
Yep.
that's what I try to do. So
That's cool. That's again, like I said before, it's cool to see like the work you put in for them actually work for them too. So that's awesome. So that's the favorite part. Unfortunately, work is work, jobs are jobs. I
bills
find
have to be
this
paid. Yes, they do.
exactly. So what is your least favorite part of working in the sports media industry?
I would say so being surrounded by folks who are lazy.
Okay.
Um, I'm finding that as I get older, I become more and more like that. Get off my lawn, you young people. But I only feel that way when I see people who have really tremendous talent and potential who are just kind of just letting it sit there and marinate as
Mhm.
opposed to just really working to get better. They're very good now, but I look at them 2, 3, 4 years later and they're no better than they were when I first met them. And that for me is disappointing because one of the things that I have experienced both as a reporter, as a writer, as a someone who's done editing, and so now someone who teaches about that is the people who have been in this business for a sustained period of time are the ones who are they become really good at something, but they don't become satisfied with that.
Mhm.
There's this you have to have a continual growth mindset in this business if you want to have a what I would consider a sustained career that has more peaks than valleys. And I have been incredibly blessed to, you know, just have lots of things just play out the way I want them to. And I don't think it's so much because of luck. I think it's because I work my ass off.
Mhm.
And I don't settle for being good. And my students, I don't settle, I don't allow them to get comfortable with doing a good job.
Mhm.
I try to nudge them and push. I don't like to push, I like to nudge because
Yeah.
pushing requires me to put more force than I think I should have to in order for you to be really good. Nudging is just simply letting you know that, oh, by the way, you're not moving. Here, you need to move a little bit. You need to
Yep.
get, and that's what I try to do. And I've been really fortunate to have a lot of students who they understand what that little nudge means, and they get the cracking when they need to, and others I don't have to nudge at all. Some I have to actually say, whoa, 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 slow down, slow down, slow down.
Yeah.
You're going to hurt yourself. And again, the teaching is just I just enjoy the hell out of it. But to answer your initial question, folks who are lazy,
Yeah.
those are the ones that I have issues with.
Gotcha.
Talented, lazy people. If you're just bad and you're lazy, you're just going to die a slow death. But it's the ones
Right.
who are really talented who aren't lazy. Those are the ones who will die 1,000 cuts.
Well, you look at
Because
them and you're probably like, you could be doing so much more than you're doing right now, but instead you don't like you're really good at this, but you don't care enough to take it to that next level.
right, right, and those are the ones that just annoy the hell out of me.
Yeah. And you said during that too that people want to grow and the I guess the space changes and I keep going back to now the power to pivot. So being I guess really an expert in the journalism field, do you have a sense of where I guess the industry could or would go or will go in the next 5, 10, 20 years, because it's always changing. I spoke to Mike Reese a couple weeks ago for episode 1, and that's the one thing he said was like, always be ready for it to change. And it's similar to power to pivot. So as someone, I guess, a little more on the inside, or someone that kind of has a 30,000 foot view of what's happened over the course of the last 30 years, what's next? You have any idea what's next?
I mean, I definitely have some ideas, but the one thing that I will say in that regard, and I'm not trying to sidestep the question.
That's okay.
My thinking about the future is that the future is going to be shaped and reshaped by you in your generation, because my generation, we can't make it any better. In fact, we're part of why it's not great. We're part of the reason why it's not as good as it could be. And so that's why, like, when I talk to students who are like starting college, or they're in college, or they're recently out of college, I say this is a great time to be you, because you are part of an industry that is dying for someone to reinvigorate it, to give it some juice, to basically reshape it into something better than it is. And it's not going to happen from my generation. It's going to happen from yours. And so for me, I'm excited. That's what I see the next 5, 10 years. I think you're going to see more thought leaders in the sports journalism ecosystem in the 20s, 30s, mid 30s age range, because those are the ones who are best positioned to make the kind of significant radical change and come up with the concepts and ideas that can elevate our profession beyond where it is right now. That's what I see more than anything else in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's why I get so excited when I'm dealing with young people who may be a little bit rough around the edges, but they've got some elements of talent that are undeniable, because my job becomes to just harness what they do well, amplify that, and give them some of the instructions or tools to be the best version of whatever their strength is, and figure out how does that fit into the grander scheme of what we do in sports journalism. And if it doesn't fit, but it has a place, figure out what that place is. And while you're at it, bring some of your friends along, and then bring some of their friends along, so that all of a sudden we have this much better profession led by folks who have the ability to not only lead it in this moment, but if you're relatively young, you've got a lot of, bandwidth and road ahead of you, so that you can continue to elevate this over time. And that's, again, that when I think about the next 5 or 10 years, that's what I see. I see younger people taking on more of an impact role in the sports journalism ecosystem.
It's a good point, and you sort of see it already too. Like sometimes, like people get away from reading and kind of listening to some of the old heads in the space, and it sort of turns into the younger, like podcasters, video shows, like all that kind of stuff, instead of your typical newspaper, deadline, TV, 6 o'clock news type stuff. And not that that stuff's ever going to go away, but when you get I guess, our generation, the younger people in front of a mic, in front of a camera, and we can make our own content, and we don't have to go through the typical, the typical journeys where some other people have gone. It changes how our counterparts and the people younger than us look at and consume the content as well. So it's a good point. Before we get into our fast 5 rapid fire question to finish, I do have one more question for you, and it's a good one I think it's a good one for you, because you already mentioned it earlier, about not being complacent and not being stuck, and not, staying on the same, I guess, plateauing and staying at one place forever. You've pivoted so much, and that's the buzzword for this episode. We can call it the pivot podcast or whatever. It's probably I guess they would that's probably trademarked or something. But is there anything more you want to accomplish? Because you were at NBC Sports Boston for so long. You just hit teaching a few years ago, and that was kind of the next step. Like, are you? I don't want to say, are you okay with teaching for the rest of your life? But what's next? Do you want to go grab anything more at this point in your career?
Right now, I'm very happy with teaching. But the one thing that I am probably, if I had to put money on myself, what's next? It would probably be just more of an administrative position, where I'm, basically delegating power and delegating responsibilities to others. But right now, teaching is what I love. I mean, it's to me, it's one of those jobs that for me, I'll spend 10, 12, 14 hours working, and it'll, at the end of the day, it'll be like, yeah, that was hard work, but it felt like I was hardly working because I was enjoying everything that I was doing.
Has this
Um,
been your favorite part of the journey so far? The teaching part?
I would say so because
That's cool.
because this part of the journey is a culmination of all the other parts before it.
Yeah.
I could not be in this position as a professor teaching if it wasn't for all the different lessons learned along the way, which I am more than happy to share with my students and other students. That's been the kind of really unexpected part about this teaching thing.
Mhm.
I have almost as many mentees at Emerson and Suffolk and different universities in the area that I do at BU because we our paths cross at
Yeah.
some point through a mutual friend or a mutual student, and next thing I am writing a letter of recommendation for a student from Dean College who's trying to get into BU's grad school. And
Right.
literally, I only spent 1 day with this person, but we kept up contact via email and text and all that other stuff. And that's happened a lot. And that's been to me, one of the unexpected bonuses of the job, to
Mhm.
be candid with you. Making those connections and seeing people grow and connecting them with my friends. I mean, it's not unusual if you're in my class, if you just might get a visit from the vice president of news for CNN.
Right.
Just might pop in, and they're just like, "Whoa, wait, you know them?" I'm like, yeah, having an opportunity to expose my students to a lot of the people that I have come to learn about and trust and grow and love and just really appreciate them for the value that they bring to the profession. I want my students to see what that looks like because for them, representation matters, and if
Mhm.
you have dreams of where you want to be, you need to see that if possible, because that's half of where the belief in doing something comes from is actually seeing it done, so that you don't feel as though you're walking through this uncharted territory. No,
Mhm.
these roads, they may be rocky, but guess what? You're not the first one who's had to go through these rocky roads. So suck it up, make it happen, and keep it moving.
It's funny you mentioned bringing people into your class too, because and now I work with Phil Perry almost every single day down in Foxborough, and so we're friendly, right? But like the day that you brought him into our class, I remember like, oh my god, that's Phil Perry. I watch him on TV every single day, and so it is like it's a different obviously in a great way experience having taken your course, and for people who haven't taken it, take it because you do have all these connections, and so it winds up being right place, right time when things happen like in the universe. But to have that resource and to have that connection, the connections you have obviously impact your students so much. And then again, it puts them in a spot moving on to succeed. So this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure people will find it very interesting because it's I don't want to say it's different, but it's like it's not your typical reporter all the way. It's you've done X, Y, Z, and then you've turned it into teaching, and now you're molding the next generation. So your story is something to listen to for sure. Before we get you out of here, Sherrod, I want to do our fast five to finish. It's fast five rapid fire questions before we get you out of here. So number one, what is your favorite thing to do outside of sports?
Today, sleep.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I just get off a flight, so he's ready to hit the sheets. Anything else? What do you like to do outside of sports?
Outside of sports, I mean, I like to watch TV.
Okay.
I watch pretty much anything on Netflix. Some of it is current stuff, some of it's not so current. I'm like literally behind. You can't see it now because the camera's facing me, but I'm watching Denzel Washington in The Little Things, and I've
Okay.
seen that movie a couple of times. But I'm just a huge Denzel fan, so that's like literally what like. Literally, there are 17 minutes left. Yeah, 17 minutes left. So that's what I'm watching right now.
All right. Number two, what is the most memorable moment you've had working in this industry so far?
Most memorable moment, probably the Malice at the Palace, where the Detroit Pistons, Indiana Pacers got into a little bit of a kerfuffle.
Yep.
That led to dramatic and radical changes throughout the NBA, many of which you see now and don't even realize where they came from. For example, when you see players come onto the court through a tunnel and there's like a tarmac over them, there
Mhm.
was no tarmac before the Malice at the Palace because when the players fought back then, there were fans throwing stuff from the stands. And so one of the first things the league enacted was they put just a kind of a covering over that tunnel area so that players, when they're going to and from the court, you can't hit them, or in theory, you can't hit them with anything if you're moved to do so in that manner. So,
Yeah. Mouse in the
yeah.
palace. And you were there,
I
courtside,
was
pretty
there.
much.
I was
Look at
there. There's video of me being there.
that. We'll have to find that.
It's on YouTube, and
That's
it's
awesome.
the not so little guy, because I had a little bit more beef on the body back then. But I have a white shirt on and I'm press row, and you'll see that I have my computer in one hand, and I think my fist is balled up. You might see it because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know
Right.
what the mindset of these players at that point was, or the fans who were part of
Yeah.
all of this. So I just wanted to make sure that I protected my computer and protected myself. So
That's great. That's funny. All right. Number 3. What is the best advice you've received in this industry?
It wasn't so much advice as much it was something that was said in a group setting, and I just kind of tweaked it to process in my head, and it's become like this unofficial mantra of mine. And that is, when you're a student, understand that as much as you want to go to this university or go to this company, and you know you're grateful for the opportunity. Don't lose sight of the fact that you have value to them. And so I've got this thing where I talk to my students now all the time about a big part of your journey is to find places and spaces that understand and appreciate your value. And that has been just one of the things that I have to take hold of myself, which is why there's certain opportunities that I've just said, no, I'm not going to do that because you don't understand or appreciate my value. And
Right.
other opportunities that may not be as lucrative or as like front and center, I will do because they have shown a high level of understanding me and
Mhm.
appreciating what I bring to the table. So places and spaces that understand and appreciate your value, that's kind of my unofficial mantra.
That always stuck with me. I remember you teaching that to us one time. It was either teaching or a conversation we had, but
Yeah.
that certainly rang a bell. So,
Yep.
number 4, what would you be doing for a career if it wasn't working in sports?
Chemical engineering, no
Yeah,
doubt
agree.
about it. There's no doubt about it. That's what I would be doing. I would be having fun with it though. Like when people think of chemical engineering, think like, oh man, that's like
That was
working in
my
a
thought.
lab and dealing with like stuff that could kill people
Yeah.
and stuff that could save people. For me, it would be like working, to make various flavored sodas, like something like that.
Okay.
That's what I would be doing. I would be
So
like
the
the soda
fun
guy.
side of chem engineering. Interesting.
Exactly, and there is, and I learned that when I was in high school, which is why I was really excited about that because there's so many different things that you don't even realize have a chemical dynamic to them, and just have that collaborative spirit with science mixed into it. But I think I made the right choice, though. I feel I made the right choice.
So in an alternate universe, we're never having this conversation, but there is some like kick-ass new soda brand out there in the
And
world.
I'm probably worth like I probably have like Mark Cuban money at
Yeah,
that point.
okay.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
but I don't
All
want to
right.
think about that.
Yeah. All right. Number 5 before we get you out of here. What is your favorite pizza topping?
Oh, pineapple.
Pineapple. All right. Just
Pineapple.
like my brother. That's my brother's favorite pizza topping too. I'm not a huge fan of it, but
I'm a fan of
uh,
it because whenever I get pizza with some combination of pineapples on it, most people don't want it. So that means all the pizza is mine.
uh,
So there's that.
there you go. All right, everyone. Sherrod Blakely. There's my mic. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been awesome, a super cool story. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak with me about your journey in the sports media industry.
Not a problem. Not a problem, Mike. Good talking with you, my friend.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. So everyone can go and follow the Behind the Mic podcast at Behind Mic Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We will be back next week for another episode. Until then, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.